Bhaye Namaha, Sabha Sabhyo Namaha. At the outset, I would like to really congratulate the team that has put this conference together, especially the team which conceived, led by Professor K.V. Raju, and the team that followed it up later, and especially Srilekha and Dr. Manasa for really having put all their efforts and time in making this happen. Before I start, I was really wondering what more can I add after listening to these two presentations, which were quite comprehensive, filled with wisdom and vivid clarity. So that being the case, I mean, not only that, it also had very practical suggestions as to what is the way forward. It's not that just speaking about something at 20,000 feet, but what to do. I think there also both the presentations were very clear, simple, small steps that we can start, we can take at our own levels. I think that was the most important part of both the presentations. So in that context, I thought maybe I'll share some of the dilemmas that I'm carrying, some questions I'm dealing with, dabbling with, and some gleanings or glimpses of insights here and there that pass us through once in a while. As to what is this IKS, what are the issues related to it, what's the way forward? I think that's the biggest question of the lot, because both these issues and strategies also should lead towards the way forward. If that way forward is not there, if I'm more occupied with issues and strategies without taking a step forward, I think it would be a futile exercise. So some of these questions, especially in the larger IKS sense, but then moving on to specifically around well-being, what implications does IKS have in that regard? First of all, I think while I understand we are in a phase where we are rediscovering what IKS means, what it should mean, how to deal with it, one danger that I see often is construing IKS to be something related to content. Just to feel that some content somewhere taken from the past, taken from the text, taken from some source which has antique value, and just add on to it. Looking at IKS can be the biggest blunder, a mistake, which most of us are doing. Probably we learn from that mistake, including our institution or any other institution. I think we are going through a discovery phase, and to that extent, I allow this possibility. But IKS is not just content. The reason is, the moment I limit IKS to content, if I filter what is available to me, I think there are largely 2-3 kinds of content that is available. One is historical, which only has historical value. I might say there was ways in which they came up with electricity in the past, but believe me, there's nothing I can do with it. I don't want to bring a clay pot, add few things, and then make electricity out of it. I won't be able to light a small bulb with it. So that's of no use to me. Similarly, it can be ethnographical. It might just represent what some people of some days did and how they practiced. Again, we have moved much beyond those things. So the moment when I don't have that content from inside, what I do is, these are the traps of limiting IKS to content. The moment when I don't find that meaningful content, I try to make it up from outside. That's where we come across with all those tall claims that happen often. Oh, this was there, that was there, everything was there, nothing was left out. Okay, all these kinds of extra exaggerated claims, and these claims will shortly also lead to some sort of frustration and disillusion and discarding of IKS, which normally goes through these 4 cycles. I don't want to go into the detail, where at some point something would have been a conscious competence, later it would be unconscious competence, but still competence. Next stage would be where I'm unconscious and incompetence. Then probably we are at that stage. We don't know why we are doing, we don't know what we are doing. Okay, so in this stage I have 2 ways. One, I try to become conscious of my incompetence, leading to understand why I am doing what I am doing, or I say everything is illusion, everything is waste of time, everything is futile, and discard. So we should be very careful at this level not to limit IKS to something that is very limited to content alone. Then what is IKS, or how do we need to see IKS? Perhaps IKS can be seen at all the 3 levels. One is, of course, a little bit of could be content, that is the knowledge section. Then secondly, knowing, how do I know things? How do I understand things? What is the framework in which I know, understand things? And third, what does it imply to my own life and being? The transformative part, that's the third part, being. So knowledge, knowing, and being, I guess, should contain all these three. If I sacrifice two for one, then I am at a big loss. Perhaps that is not even IKS at all. That's what is happening with some of the so-called ancient practices also. For example, Ayurveda, just both Dr. Mala and Dr. Sudha was referring to. You can also, many people are practicing Ayurveda just as allopathy medicine. Okay, for fever, you just prescribe this thing, and this should work for all, without considering the prakriti of the individual, without understanding the swabhava and the swadharma of the individual. Then you just prescribe medicine. So all these are the traps. So we have the talent to reduce anything into modern systems. Even the so-called IKS systems can be reduced into that. I think that is another danger that we need to be watchful and careful about. So knowledge, knowing, and being. In fact, yesterday both Professor Mahadevan and Raghav Krishna were emphasizing this aspect, that how transformative is this to you at the individual level? What does it mean at the individual level? What kind of implications it has had on you? Just to give you one quote and then come back here. In one of the highest texts of spirituality, Brahma Sutra, Acharya Shankara makes it very clear when he says, even this Vedanta Vidya, for most of us, it is much above and beyond. Even there he says, Anubhava avasanatvathi brahmajnanasya. Even the brahmajnana finally should culminate in one's experience. If it does not culminate in one's experience, then it's of no use at all. What's the use of speaking something that is so 10,000, 20,000 feet high, unless it has some impact on my personal life? So, Anubhava avasana, the experiential element, the implications on one's own being, is something that is intrinsic to IKS. If that part is left out, I don't know if I can call that as intrinsic. So then, if this is the case about IKS and understanding of IKS, then why do we need it? Perhaps is the another question. Again, I don't want to spend time much on it, but just to quickly touch upon one thing that all of us know is, allow us some kind of pride in the past, which is a very low-hanging fruit. We are in a certain developmental phase historically where that is required for us at the moment, but that won't serve us long. All sorts of false pride or pride which is not based on right knowledge is very short-lived and also might have very disastrous consequences. And we see this often happening in this part of the world and other parts of the world too. Therefore, while it is something good, easy, and quickly available, there are reasons why we should go beyond it. And I think that is the most important thing. Knowledge has to be representative. This is where the problem is. We are made to believe that knowledge is universal, while it is the ideal statement. It is not the case, especially not so in social sciences and soft sciences. In fact, one of the greatest anthropologists, Claude Lévi-Strauss, in one of his talks at Smithsonian Institute, he makes it very clear. He starts the statement saying, quote, anthropology is not an impassionate science like astronomy. And it continues. And finally he says, anthropology is nothing but the knowledge of the conquered by the conqueror. This is how we have been understanding humanity. This is how, so one section of humanity which has had the conqueror role is trying to understand the conquered, and out of this anthropology has emerged, and all the social sciences today, including psychology, have emerged from that period of violence. Therefore, intrinsically, they carry these notions of violence inherent in them. Therefore, there is a need to come out of that kind of a knowledge system so that knowledge becomes more representative, knowledge becomes more democratic, alternative views, alternative perspectives, alternative ways of seeing and understanding things have to find a rightful place in the universal landscape of knowledge. And that is where there is a huge need to dwell into Indian knowledge systems, indigenous knowledge systems, not for India alone. I mean, we need to see the kind of impact it has left in all the colonial world, colonial countries. All of them share the same kind of lack of confidence in their own systems, in their own traditions, in their own understandings. So, discovery of Indian knowledge systems is not for India alone or not for Indians alone, but it is for that larger part of the world where knowledge has been very systematically and structurally subdued and kept under chains. So in order to help the humanity at large, there needs to be a representation of other views and thoughts as well, and that's where we need to dwell into indigenous Indian knowledge systems to make knowledge more representative. So these are the two major reasons why I see, when it comes to the issues of IKS, why we need to dwell on it. Because we don't use the terms like Western knowledge systems, European knowledge systems, but here we are using, and we are using it for a reason, and this is a certain purpose, and it needs to be there only till that purpose is served. And once that purpose is being served, I think the way forward would be moving from indigenous Indian knowledge system to integrative knowledge systems. As a practitioner of health and medicine, for me, the foremost thing is to ensure the health of my patient or my therapy participant. Whichever route I take, I might draw something from allopathy, I might draw something from Ayurveda, as long as they are serving the purpose, as long as they stand to reason and test of various parameters, I think I should be able to provide that. I think that's how it is happening in many places. Integrative approach. In fact, there are hospitals that are coming up with the integrative medicine approach. So I guess that would be the way forward when we go along. Maybe it might take 5 years, 10 years. I don't know, because the work has to be done on both the sides, where confidence has to be built in the indigenous knowledge systems. And there is a sense of being privileged and monopolizing in the modern knowledge systems, which also need to be addressed, or conversations need to be set up between these two. So this are some of the things that I was having in mind when I was thinking about issues and way forward. But now coming on to my own area, my limited area of my engagement for some time, that is yoga, psychology, well-being, and continuing with from what Dr. Sudha just brought in at the end of her presentation. What all does well-being contain? In fact, well-being is nothing but a long-term assessment of one's being at physical, psychological, emotional, social, and spiritual domains. And also being able to contribute, or rather have an optimum functionality and flourishing. That all constitutes well-being. If this is the case, if this is how we understand well-being in positive psychology, which is getting quite popular today, then if I really have to look at those systems which hold a greater promise for understanding this, then I would really say no other system, no other tradition apart from the Indian tradition has invested so much upon understanding the mind, understanding the practices related to the mind, and developing means and methods to find meaning in life. I think here lies India's contribution, or Indian thought tradition's contribution exclusively. While there have been attempts across all civilization traditions, I think in such a systematic manner, I don't see it being put across in any other traditions. Therefore, it becomes relevant, not just historically, not just ethnographically, but it becomes relevant for the positive contributions it can make to existing psychology, so that these systems become integrative in nature, not just excluding something and taking off. Like, I don't see a conflict while we speak in the manners that there is to a conflict. If the humanity has to progress, it can't take the route of conflict. It can't take the route of being exclusive, completely removing the other. The othering cannot happen. We need to see what are the best components and where to make the marriage happen and take it forward. I think in this context, Indian psychology or yoga psychology has much more to offer. Just a few things as to what it can offer us. First thing, the deeper philosophical foundations as to understanding the human mind, the human phenomenon. Again here, why am I insisting on Indian thought tradition is for simple reason. Like physics, psychology is not a context-free science. Physics could be universal to a large extent, but psychology emerges from a context, from a way you understand human being and human function. So, and this has varied significantly from culture to culture, from tradition to tradition, from living landscapes from one to the other. So, this being the case, we need to really consider the context, and here the kind of deeper philosophical foundation that Indian psychology has to offer is something that is so critical and important for the simple reason. I'm just giving you one example, but one of the core examples of the field. In the modern understanding, in the modern psychology, we take human phenomena largely material in nature, and consciousness is an epiphenomenon, an emergent phenomenon which comes out of the physical basis and the biological basis. So what is the basic entity and what is the emergent property is different there. The way Indian psychology looks and perceives at things is completely the opposite. It takes consciousness as the basis and everything else, the material envelope, as something that follows. Brain can appear like a seat of activities for the consciousness, whereas Indian approach takes it to be that consciousness is the fundamental, it is the basic through which everything including brain, the mind and the body operates. So this is a complete shift in the lens through which we see the world, and it has huge implications on many things, but I will not indulge in the details here, but just to suffice to say that this will completely shift our perspective as to how we look at the world. What we think as abnormal today, what we think as extra normal or paranormal would be changed the other way around. That becomes normal and everything else becomes, see, now we consider someone to be very miserly, stingy, cruel to be normal. Having conflict, one of the basic understandings of the Freudian system was that human being is continuously in conflict with himself, with people around and the nature around. And this was considered to be normal. If someone had a more altruistic behavior, then it was something to be abnormal or paranormal. But if I change the lens, then altruistic and many things, being compassionate, all these things are very much part of one's nature, where being the other way around is something abnormal, right? In fact, I mean, it's not that it's only the Indian thought that we have arrived at it. There have been attempts elsewhere also in the life and works of the mystics across the world, but only that they have not been developed into full-fledged systems, right? I mean, look at the works of the mystics there, whether it's in Francis of Assisi or even as recent as Viktor Frankl, of the founder of the logotherapy. I mean, he notes from the prison's life, he says, like, he was in the 4 concentration camps, and he says, I have seen people who had the last piece of bread, yet they choose to give it to someone else so that the other person lives. I mean, when you are put into such a level, such a degree where you don't have an identity, you don't have a name, you don't have any existence, you are nothing but just a number carved on your hand. Yet, someone chooses to be helpful to the others, someone chooses to sacrifice his bread for the other, who is not even related to him. And this is what the core essence of human personality. So all these things would get a proper theoretical, philosophical framework in the Indian context. So one of the fundamental contributions of Indian psychology would be in the area of the deeper psychological, philosophical foundations it can offer. Second one is the episteme or the epistemology or the methods of subjective inquiry. What happened in the modern science modern psychology when it started to function? In fact, they also started with the subjective elements. What is thought? What is memory? What is feeling? What is sensation? But just in a few years of time, since they felt it is so difficult or we don't have the proper instrumentation to understand it, so let me discard introspection as a method of inquiry. So, I mean, you have purchased a bed and the cot is not suiting your length. So what did you choose to do? Instead of replacing or returning that cot on the Amazon, you decided to chop off your legs. That's exactly what we did. Just because I cannot enter and see, I don't have means and methods properly to understand my thoughts and feelings, let me discard it with objective methodologies. Therefore, on a lighter side, we say about psychology. Initially, psychology lost its soul because when it started, it was the study of soul. Okay, it's lost its soul, then lost its mind, and finally retained only its behavior, because what we study is its behavior. It's been behavioral sciences, right? And how do you make up for this loss? I mean, and no one questions it. I really wonder how this happens. So when you can't study an individual, you can't study the thoughts and the emotions there, what you do is you give them a questionnaire. What does questionnaire actually intend to do? Questionnaire tries to make you introspect a little bit, but superficial. So people give their responses while you're still using introspection, and you say introspection is not rigorous enough. It's not good enough as a methodology in science. So how do you overcome the limitation there? You do a statistics of the population and say this is how the population. So what you lack in content, you are making up with statistics. And this entire, instead of being bold enough to come up with better means to investigate mind, you just threw off an opportunity, golden opportunity, and compromise there. Here is where Indian psychology stands out. It says, I understand there is a great difficulty, but let me come up with instruments which can do that. In fact, other branches of science have followed this. When I go to astronomy, I don't depend on the population's observation as to what you feel, which star, where it stands. How do I do? I depend my knowledge on gifted people who are well trained and who have sophisticated instrumentation. Right? Basis their findings, I arrive what is astronomical scientific knowledge. And here, in case of doing that, what I'm replacing it with is, I do a survey. Right? And still, introspection is still the part of that. But yet, I consider introspection not to be good enough a method. But here, just take up, one text like Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, which has 112 ways of meditation. If one meditation system works for you, it's good. If it doesn't, try other thing. But try as many possible methods through which you can uncover the various layers that are there and see if you can even have a small peep inside, then it serves the purpose. And all our rishis, all our sages, whether it's Sri Aurobindo, Ramana Maharshi, is what they did throughout their lives, right? And so we definitely have some inputs as to how to go ahead with subjective inquiry. Again, not just subjective inquiry, rigorous subjectivity. So there are means and methods through which we can do that. So this is the second important thing. First one was the deeper philosophical foundations. Second one was epistemology or rigorous subjectivity. And the third place where it can contribute immensely is theories of self and personality, right? The way human being is understood, whether it is the Panchakosha model or it is the the Anandamaya understanding of the Ananda Mimamsa section of the Taittiriya Upanishad, which keeps Ananda at the core of human personality. All these understandings of self and personality. Here is where the content component comes. The first two were not contents. Okay, so IKS is much larger than the content. Okay, third part is the content, where much better. Why I am saying much better is that this approach is more accommodative. While I can explain the things which the Freudian system allows me to do. I can explain certain things with a behavioristic model will allows me to do. Okay, keeping the Annamaya Kosha as the basis, the physical basis, then there are things I can explain. There are certain things I can explain with the Pranamaya Kosha, which goes well with Freudian findings, whether it's conflict, whether it could be some of the things. But it does not limit the understanding of human phenomenon to that. It extends or offers 3 more ranges. So when I say this is better, I am not judging them, but I am trying to say which system has a more or a larger accommodative nature, and in that sense, it is more comprehensive. So this is the third component, theories of self and personality. And the fourth one is some specialized psychological theories. I think this is something really beautiful and significant in the sense that our understanding of rasa, anubhuti, bhava, motivational theories, I think aesthetics, the kind of investment that the Indian mind has made in understanding what rasa is, what is the rasa, the Rasa Sutra so beautifully brings out vibhava, anubhava, sanyoga, all these things, and it goes to the depth of the experience. I think all these things add meaning to life. That's what can contribute to a well-led, contentful, meaningful life, which is nothing but well-being. So the fourth one is some specialized theories which are really deeply, which have been developed over deeper examination of human subtle aspects. And the last one, again, which is to some extent familiar to all of us, but only that we don't discuss it in an academic scenario, is the applied psychology part, where all the yoga practices, asana practices, pranayama practices are nothing but applied psychology. There is a well-developed technique, there is a well-developed practices which undertaken have proved results as to how they are helping us. A simple pranayama technique or a simple long exhalation practice has very well established benefits, right from increasing the nitric oxide to enhanced immunity, so on and so forth, right? So all these are very well established or getting established. But again, do we discuss in classrooms? No, we don't. We do it in the outside, we do it in studios, we do it elsewhere. But why have they not come into classroom discussion? Why only certain means of psychotherapy is discussed, but not the others? In fact, why is your world picking up yoga? Is it only because someone announced January 21st to be International Yoga Day? No, it is actually other way around. The world had picked up. Therefore, when it was announced January 21st was the World Day of Yoga, then people started to recognize it. Yoga did not become popular because of 21st June. Yoga was already popular, right? Why? Because people have already started experiencing the benefits. And once you start experiencing benefits, you don't need any more convincing than to one's experience, right? Then if that is the case, then how do I use that effectively? So it has implications in psychotherapy, it has implications in development psychology, it has implications in dealing with certain special cases as well. So applied psychology would be the fifth area where Indian psychology can contribute, and all these put together, I think, has a huge potential in enhancing well-being. So it's not just about knowing something, but from knowing leading towards being. And it's all at the end of the day, how happy I am, how fulfilled I am, how content I am. And this kind of long-term assessment of one's own life is well-being. And I think this is one area, again, which not in the historical sense, not in the ethnographical sense, not in any other past sense, but contemporary and future tenses and senses, that Indian psychology or the Indian knowledge systems in this area is extremely important and beneficial. Thank you very much.